Imagine you're standing on this huge slab of just freezing cold asphalt for, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes.
Sounds miserable already.
Right. And you're just shuffling your feet forward, like inch by inch. You're surrounded by hundreds of other tourists. Everyone's clutching their water bottles, craning their necks.
Just waiting.
Exactly. And get this, it's Thanksgiving Day. You are supposed to be out experiencing the untamed, breathtaking wilderness of the American Southwest. But instead, you're basically stuck in a theme park queue.
Yeah, that's the grim reality of modern outdoor tourism, honestly.
Totally. Your entire morning is just completely dedicated to securing the privilege of boarding this massive diesel-choked metal box. And once you're actually inside, you're just crammed shoulder to shoulder with strangers.
Fighting for window space.
Yes, you're fighting for a sliver of tinted glass just to catch a tiny, fleeting glimpse of a mountain peak.
Which is, I mean, it's crazy. We treat our most majestic landscapes as drive-through attractions now. You're trapped in this climate-controlled, highly insulated bubble.
You're completely divorced from the physical reality of the place. Right. You're observing the park, but you aren't really participating in it. The whole ecosystem just becomes this flat diorama.
A passive backdrop to your transit. And that traditional American road trip model, I mean, it's reached its absolute breaking point, especially when you look at the geography of Zion National Park in Utah.
Oh, absolutely. It's the third most visited national park in the whole United States.
Which is wild. And when you actually stand at the base of Zion Canyon, the scale is just incomprehensible. You're looking up at these sheer, multicolored rock cliffs that tower thousands of feet straight up into the sky.
You feel the crisp, aggressive mountain wind.
Yeah, you smell the cottonwood trees, the dust. And the moment you experience those sensory details, that standard passive windshield experience inside a shuttle bus suddenly feels like a profound waste of time.
It really does. Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. Right. Today, we are asking a very specific, radically different question about how we interact with our public lands. What if the absolute best way to see Zion Canyon isn't from the window of a personal car?
And what if it isn't from the crowded belly of a commercial shuttle either?
Exactly. What if the best way is actually from the saddle of a bicycle?
Which is a fantastic question. And to explore that, we're pulling from a really robust collection of on-the-ground accounts. We have data from solo riders using e-bikes, traditional endurance cyclists, and this one really great account from a massive multi-generational family outing.
Yeah, that family source is amazing. They had teenagers riding right alongside grandmothers.
It's incredible. And we're also factoring in all the official infrastructure guidelines from the Zion National Park Lodge, just to understand how the park itself accommodates this shift in transportation.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because bypassing a 45-minute wait on Thanksgiving Day to jump on a bike sounds super appealing in theory. But my immediate instinct is that cycling in National Park is, reserved for elite athletes in spandex. I just imagine grinding up these treacherous mountain passes, completely exposed to the elements.
That's the standard assumption, yeah.
Right. But the sources paint a completely different picture. It's more like getting VIP backstage access that literally almost anyone can utilize.
It's like walking past the endless line for a stadium concert, flashing a pass, and just strolling right onto the stage.
Exactly. You bypass the static, low-resolution TV broadcast of the shuttle window, and suddenly you can actually feel the acoustic resonance of the canyon walls right in your chest.
But to understand how that level of VIP access is even possible, we really have to look at the unique history of Zion itself. The infrastructure forces a very specific behavior.
Yeah, because the precise reason those shuttle queues are so nightmarish is the exact same reason the cycling environment is so pristine, right?
Precisely. The foundational element of this whole experience is the evolution of the park's car ban.
The car ban. It's the unsung hero of this entire story. Because it's so easy to assume that riding a bike through a popular national park means you're constantly dodging massive rented RVs.
Or stressed out parents hunting for a parking spot.
Oh, the worst. But historically, that actually was the reality, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. The Zion Canyon Scenic Drive was originally built for that post-World War II boom in automobile tourism. But the geography there is totally unforgiving. It's a dead-end, glacially carved gorge.
Right. There are no expansive meadows to just pave over for parking lots.
Exactly. So by the late 90s, the canyon was effectively functioning as a gridlocked parking lot. The natural soundscape was completely obliterated by the drone of idling engines.
And the air quality was suffering too, I imagine.
It was terrible, so the park administration had to make this really drastic, highly controversial choice. They implemented a mandatory shuttle system and banned all personal passenger cars from the main scenic drive.
And initially, based on the historical context from our sources, that ban was somewhat seasonal. It covered the peak summer months, roughly April through October.
Right, but the modern reality is way different. There's been a massive surge in year-round visitation. One of the solo cyclists in our sources actually interviewed a park employee who confirmed the new normal.
And it's intense.
It is. The sheer volume of tourists has forced the park to extend that car ban significantly. Personal vehicles are now entirely prohibited from entering the scenic drive from March all the way through the end of November.
A 9-month prohibition. I mean, to the average tourist planning a summer road trip, discovering you cannot drive your own car into the main canyon probably feels like a massive restriction of freedom.
It definitely creates immense logistical friction for the typical driver. The only window for, unrestrained vehicular access is the dead of winter.
December through February, when no one really wants to go because of the harsh conditions. But here's where it gets really interesting for our purposes. That logistical friction for the driver creates a literal utopia for the cyclist.
It really does.
When you physically remove thousands of unpredictable, stressed-out drivers from an 18-mile stretch of perfectly maintained asphalt, the environment just fundamentally transforms.
You're left with this smooth, sweeping ribbon of road shared almost exclusively with highly trained shuttle drivers, a few pedestrians, and your fellow cyclists.
Finding 18 consecutive miles of flawless paving through a world-class geological wonder, completely devoid of civilian traffic, that's an absolute anomaly in North America.
It's a highly engineered, artificially preserved sanctuary, and this is a big but, that sanctuary sits behind a major bottleneck.
Oh yeah, getting in.
Right. You have to figure out a strategy to get your physical body and your bicycle through the heavily fortified front gates of the park.
Because arriving at Zion is an exercise in extreme patience if you don't know the hacks. And our sources outline some incredible hacks. So let's look at the baseline expectation first.
Okay, the baseline. A visitor drives up to the main gate, fully intending to park inside the park boundaries at the official visitor center.
And the entry fee for a private vehicle is $35.
Which, paying the fee is actually the easy part. The catastrophic failure point in that plan is just the physical scarcity of space.
Yeah, that family source we're tracking, the one with the kids and the grandmas, they attempted this exact strategy. They drove their vehicles into the massive main lots inside the park during a peak window, and they hit a complete wall.
Completely full.
Totally full. Not a single space available. You can just imagine the stress. You have the whole family loaded up with gear. The kids are getting restless.
And you're just slowly circling rows of parked cars, praying someone leaves.
It's a terrible way to start an adventure.
It is. The supply and demand curve for internal parking at Zion is just permanently broken. But the sources reveal a critical bypass mechanism.
The town of Springdale.
Yes, Springdale. It borders the immediate southern boundary of the park. It acts as this gateway community. And it's basically the release valve for the pressure of the park.
One writer really documented the parking situation out on the town streets thoroughly. You can find paid parking lining the main thoroughfare of Springdale, directly leading up to the park entrance, for roughly $20 a day.
Which is cheaper than the park fee anyway.
Yeah.
And utilizing that Springdale parking infrastructure completely rewrites your morning routine.
How so?
Well, instead of sitting in a mile-long line of idling cars waiting to cross the vehicle toll booth, you just unload your bicycles at your parking spot in town.
You literally just gear up right there on the street.
Exactly. And then you simply pedal your bike up to the dedicated pedestrian entrance.
I love that. It's a completely separate channel. You pay a reduced entrance fee, around $20 per person, for walking or biking in. You show your ID, and you walk your bike across a bridge right into the park.
You skip the vehicular gridlock entirely. It's brilliant. It's so strategic.
Right.
But that choice of where to park your car subsequently dictates the entire physical scale of your cycling expedition, right?
It does. We have to address the varying fitness levels here. The core route, from the visitor center up the canyon to the turnaround point and back down, that's a firm 18-mile round trip.
18 miles is like the golden number for a really robust, fulfilling day outdoors. It won't completely destroy the legs of a casual rider.
It's perfect. It provides a sufficient challenge without requiring elite endurance. But the sources indicate that dedicated road cyclists utilize a much wider geographical footprint.
You don't have to park at the gate.
Right. The endurance junkies can start much further out.
Yeah, the sources mapped out a route starting all the way from the town of Hurricane. Hurricane is situated approximately 23 miles away from the Springdale entrance.
Which is a massive jump, right? If an athlete decides to park in Hurricane, ride the high desert highway all the way to Zion, complete the 18-mile scenic drive inside the canyon, and then pedal all the way back to Hurricane, they have suddenly engineered a grueling 50-mile round trip.
And a 50-mile excursion through the arid, undulating topography of southern Utah is a serious athletic endeavor. That requires meticulous hydration planning and significant cardiovascular training.
I mean, I cannot imagine subjecting a 10-year-old or a grandmother to a 50-mile desert marathon.
No, absolutely not.
For the vast majority of visitors attempting to capture the magic of the canyon without, suffering heat stroke, the strategy is aggressive proximity.
Yes. The sources strongly advocate for parking at facilities like Zion Outfitters, which are located mere yards from the pedestrian entrance.
You really want to preserve every ounce of your energy for the canyon itself. Don't waste it navigating highway shoulders.
Exactly. So securing that prime parking spot brings the visitor to the next critical decision point. You've breached the gates. Now you must select the appropriate mechanical equipment for the terrain.
You have to choose your steed.
You do.
And I will openly admit that before diving into these sources, my assumptions about what kind of bike to bring were entirely wrong.
How so?
Well, when you hear the words Utah and National Park,
Yeah.
your brain just immediately conjures images of extreme sports. I naturally pictured a heavy, rugged mountain bike.
Oh, sure. Thick, knobby tires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dual suspension systems, something built to absorb the shock of dropping off red rock boulders. But the sources aggressively debunk that assumption.
They really do.
Bringing a heavy mountain bike is not just unnecessary, it is actively detrimental to the experience.
Selecting a mountain bike for the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive just demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the infrastructure you'll be navigating.
Let's break down the mechanics of why a mountain bike fails here. First of all, the dream of tearing up dirt single-track trails deep in the Zion wilderness, that's a total regulatory illusion.
Right. The sources clearly note that bicycles of any kind are strictly forbidden on the unpaved hiking trails within the canyon.
Banned completely.
The fragile desert ecosystem and the sheer volume of pedestrian hikers make multi-use dirt trails an absolute impossibility. If you attempt to ride a bicycle onto a dirt trail, you're in direct violation of park regulations.
So all that heavy off-road suspension capability is rendered entirely useless anyway? You're never going to take the bike off the pavement.
Never. And the second, more mechanical reason involves the concept of rolling resistance.
Ah, yes.
The scenic drive was engineered to support the weight of multi-ton commercial buses. Consequently, the asphalt is meticulously maintained.
There are no gravel washboards, no bone-rattling potholes. It is smoother than most suburban neighborhood streets.
Which is exactly the environment where a mountain bike's design works against the rider. Thick, knobby tires create massive friction against smooth asphalt.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the suspension system absorbs the downward force of your pedaling, which basically bleeds off your kinetic energy.
So you're working harder for less speed.
Way harder. Over an 18-mile route, a heavy mountain bike will exhaust a rider far faster than a lightweight road bike or a standard street commuter. You really want thin, high-pressure tires that just slice through the air and roll effortlessly.
And the father, from our family source, learned this lesson the hard way. He documented that his kids, the 10-year-old and the 18-year-old, tackled the 18 miles on standard heavy mountain bikes.
And how did that go?
Well, they managed to complete the journey. He noted it was a massive exertion of totally unnecessary effort. They were just working so hard.
Right. But while we're analyzing the mechanics of the equipment, we have to acknowledge the absolute technological revolution that has completely reshaped the demographic profile of this park.
We have to talk about the e-bike.
The e-bike. It's a game changer. The proliferation of pedal-assist electric bicycles has fundamentally democratized access to the Zion Canyon interior.
It is an absolute takeover. I mean, in the background footage of the sources, almost every single bicycle rolling past the camera is an electric rental.
It's the new standard.
One solo rider dedicated a significant portion of his account to observing this shift. He noted that analog bikes are rapidly becoming the minority out there.
And another source provided a really granular breakdown of renting these machines from a local outfitter called Zion Guru in Springdale.
Yeah, and the financial barrier to entry is surprisingly reasonable because, renting sophisticated recreational technology in a captive tourist market usually incurs a massive premium.
You'd expect to pay a fortune.
But the source rented these heavy-duty e-bikes for $90 for a full day. And these are not fragile gimmick toys. These are substantial pieces of machinery,
Absolutely. The batteries provide a reliable 30-mile range on a single charge.
which is key. That specific range metric is critical for eliminating a major psychological hurdle, right?
Yes, range anxiety. If the entire round trip from the visitor center is 18 miles, a 30-mile battery capacity provides a 12-mile safety buffer.
That's huge.
It means a rider can heavily rely on the electric motor during the uphill ascent, take spontaneous detours to the lodge, ride back down to Springdale, and still never risk the battery dying and leaving them pedaling a 40-pound hunk of metal through the desert.
So what does this all mean for the sociological makeup of the tourists visiting the park? It completely shatters the barrier of physical endurance.
It really does. The family group we're analyzing is the perfect laboratory for this theory.
They really are. You have this sprawling, multi-generational squad, athletic teenagers, middle-aged parents, and 2 grandmothers.
In any previous decade, keeping a group with that much variance in physical capability together on an 18-mile canyon ride would be physically impossible.
Totally impossible. The physiological strain on a senior citizen attempting a 9-mile sustained climb in the desert heat would typically just limit their participation entirely.
They would be relegated to the shuttle bus while the younger family members rode ahead.
But the e-bike erased that gap. The grandmothers rented e-bikes, and the father reported that they absolutely breezed through the canyon.
They maintained pace with the teenagers?
Yes. The father was so ecstatic, he specifically stated, "That's why I love e-bikes." It allowed 3 separate generations to experience the canyon as a unified pack.
And the diversity of transportation methods doesn't even stop there.
Oh, right. They documented a father hauling a literal infant behind him in a 2-wheeled fabric trailer.
Relying entirely on his own leg power on an analog street bike.
The infrastructure just supports everyone.
It does, but the utility of the e-bike extends far beyond just propulsion. The sources highlight a specific design feature of these rentals that solves a major logistical headache for park visitors.
Are you talking about the cargo transport?
Yes. These bikes are outfitted with rear baskets.
This is such a brilliant under-the-radar benefit. Visitors rarely come to Zion with the sole intention of just riding the pavement.
Right. The cycling is usually a delivery mechanism to reach the world-renowned hiking trailheads located deep in the canyon.
And the most famous example being the Narrows.
Exactly. Hiking the Narrows involves wading upstream through the freezing waters of the Virgin River inside a remarkably tight slot canyon.
Which means wading through a rocky river requires highly specialized gear. You need heavy, thick neoprene water boots to protect your ankles. You need dry bibs. You need sturdy trekking poles to maintain your balance in the current.
Imagine trying to carry all of that clumsy, heavy equipment on your back while riding a bicycle.
It sounds miserable.
Yeah.
A heavy backpack dramatically shifts a cyclist's center of gravity and increases back strain, especially on an incline.
But the e-bike rental includes this massive reinforced basket over the rear tire, complete with a heavy-duty locking mechanism.
And the sources demonstrated how this transforms the bike into a mobile locker room. You ride the 18 miles wearing comfortable, lightweight athletic gear.
You roll up to the Temple of Sinawava trailhead, pull your heavy boots and trekking poles out of the basket, and swap your gear right there.
You lock the bike to the rack, hike the river for 4 hours, and when you return, you toss the soaking wet, heavy neoprene boots back into the basket.
And you just let the electric motor haul the dead weight back to town.
It's genius. You completely bypass the suffocating shuttle queues, you transport bulky equipment without any physical penalty, and you arrive at the trailhead entirely refreshed rather than exhausted.
It's the ultimate hack.
Okay, so you are through the gates. Your gear is secured in the basket. You understand the electric assist. Now we really need to map out the physical sensation of the ascent.
Let's walk through the exact progression of riding into the belly of the canyon.
So the transition from the busy visitor center to the open scenic drive involves navigating a very specific buffer zone first, right?
Yes. Before the road truly opens up, cyclists are routed onto a section commonly referred to as the Paris Trail or the River Trail.
And how long is that?
This covers approximately the first 1.5 to 2.5 miles of the journey.
Now, my immediate concern with a dedicated path at the entrance of a major national park is just the sheer density of humans.
And that concern is entirely justified. This initial segment is a shared, multi-use path. It hugs the banks of the Virgin River and serves as a major artery for foot traffic.
And the sources pointed out a bizarre anomaly for a national park here. Dogs are actually permitted on this specific trail.
Which is very rare.
Right. So you have families wrangling toddlers, amateur photographers stopping abruptly in the middle of the path to capture the light on the water, and dogs wandering to the end of their retractable leashes.
It's chaotic. This environment requires an immediate and drastic adjustment in your cycling etiquette.
You really have to rein it in.
Absolutely. The kinetic energy of a bicycle must be aggressively managed when sharing space with unpredictable pedestrians and animals.
One of the sources captured the vibe perfectly with this great phrase, "There are no yellow jerseys here."
I love that.
Yeah, this is not a stage of the Tour de France. You are not clipping into your pedals and sprinting for a personal record.
Yeah.
The speed limit is functionally a fast walk.
You basically have your fingers resting heavily on the brake levers the whole time, ringing your bell, offering polite warnings as you navigate the crowds.
It's just a slow, gentle warm-up for the legs.
But the sociology of that multi-use path eventually gives way to a crucial geographical divergence. You reach the end of the river trail, and you arrive at the fork.
Ah, the fork.
Yeah.
This is where you finally leave the casual walkers behind.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
road splits. If you veer right, the highway climbs rapidly up and out of the canyon walls, tunneling through the rock and heading east towards Bryce Canyon.
And that road is terrifyingly steep. It's packed with massive RVs, completely exposed to vehicular chaos.
You do not want to go that way on a bike. But if you veer left, you pass the gate. You enter the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive.
The car ban takes effect, and the true ascent begins.
The visual psychology of entering the main canyon is so intimidating. You are instantly flanked by sheer vertical sandstone walls that rise 2,000 feet straight up.
And the human brain naturally assumes that traveling deeper into a gorge, surrounded by towering peaks, will require this brutal, agonizing climb.
You'd assume you're putting the bike in the lowest possible gear and just grinding your knees to dust.
That's exactly what I pictured. But the telemetry data from our sources completely shatters that visual illusion. The father from the Frugal Fit Dad channel break down the mathematics of the route, and the numbers are remarkably gentle.
Very gentle. Over the entire 18-mile round trip, so that's 9 miles pushing into the canyon and 9 miles descending, the cumulative elevation gain is a mere 670 feet.
That's nothing. In the context of cycling topography, dispersing 670 feet of climbing over 9 miles of forward travel barely qualifies as a hill.
It's essentially an incredibly gradual ramp.
The solo cyclist actually utilized a GPS tracker to provide the exact gradients. The road constantly fluctuates between a 1% and a 4% incline.
It averages out to a sustained 2% grade.
And cyclists refer to a 2% incline as a false flat, right?
Yes, a false flat.
A false flat is the most deceptive terrain in the world. Visually, the road looks completely level. Your eyes are telling you that you are riding on a flat surface.
But your calves are suddenly burning.
Exactly, your breathing gets heavy. It is like walking on an airport-moving walkway that you don't realize is tilted upward.
You're constantly outputting effort to maintain momentum, but you never hit a wall that forces you to actually stand up on the pedals.
It's just a slow, methodical, rolling burn on the way in.
But while the mathematical gradient is mild, assessing the physical challenge purely by elevation ignores the brutal reality of the environment.
The weather.
The weather. The exertion is exponentially magnified by the canyon's microclimate.
Because the elements in a desert canyon do not play by normal rules. One of the solo riders documented his trip in mid-April.
And if you look at a calendar, mid-April in the American Southwest sounds like an idyllic, warm spring vacation.
Sounds perfect. But a storm front had pushed through the region the night before his ride. When he unloaded his bike at dawn, the ambient air temperature was 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
45 degrees stationary is chilly. 45 degrees when you are actively generating wind chill by moving at 10 miles per hour on a bicycle. That is profoundly cold.
Furthermore, the immense geological structure of the canyon operates like a thermodynamic funnel.
Yes, explain that funnel effect, because the wind was a massive adversary for these riders.
So the towering rock walls act as massive heat sinks. As the sun rises and begins to heat the upper atmosphere, the cold, dense air trapped at the bottom of the canyon floor begins to shift.
Creating these aggressive thermal drafts.
Exactly. The canyon walls physically constrain these air masses, forcing the wind to blast directly down the corridor.
And the family riders experience this phenomenon in real time. On their 9-mile ascent, they weren't just battling the 2% falls flat. They were riding straight into the teeth of a sustained headwind, funneling down the gorge.
You have cold air, a relentless headwind, and a constant uphill pedal. The obvious question is, how do you possibly dress for an environment that hostile?
Well, attempting this ride in a cotton t-shirt and standard athletic shorts is a recipe for deep discomfort, even if the temperature feels moderate at the visitor center in Springdale.
The sources relied on trial and error to perfect a really rigorous layering strategy. One of the mothers explicitly warned against wearing traditional thin spandex cycling shorts.
What did she wear instead?
She opted for thick, fleece-lined athletic leggings. The entire family adopted this modular approach: long pants, insulating fleece mid-layers, and windproof outer shells.
Which is smart because the challenge of thermoregulation in a slot canyon is that your physical output is constantly fighting the ambient environment. As you push against that headwind on the incline, your heart rate spikes.
Your body acts as a furnace. You're rapidly generating heat.
You start sweating under the fleece. You feel fantastic while you're pedaling through a section of the road bathed in direct morning sunlight. You start unzipping the windbreaker. You consider taking off the gloves.
But the moment the road curves or the angle of the sun dips behind a 2,000-foot sandstone monolith, you're instantly submerged in deep, heavy shadow.
And the temperature plummets by 15 degrees in a matter of seconds.
All that sweat you just generated in the sun suddenly turns to ice water against your skin. You are desperately zipping the jacket back up.
It's a constant, miles-long battle of adjusting zippers and adding or shedding layers.
Synthesizing the data from the sources establishes a very clear thermal window for attempting this ride, I think.
Definitely. You're looking for ambient temperatures ranging between a minimum of 40 degrees and a maximum of 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Because if you start a ride when it is 35 degrees, the wind chill during the high-speed descent later in the day will literally freeze your hands to the brake levers.
Conversely, if you push into the upper 90s, the intense solar radiation bouncing off the asphalt and the rock walls will induce heat exhaustion very quickly on the exposed sections.
So this thermal reality dictates a strict temporal strategy for summer visitors. If you arrive in July or August, when afternoon canyon temperatures routinely shatter 100 degrees, you cannot casually start your ride after breakfast.
You must be at the park gates before sunrise.
You have to utilize the deep morning shadows to complete the ascent and ensure you are off the asphalt entirely before the midday sun turns the canyon floor into a convection oven.
Okay, so the physical climb and the fluctuating weather require constant attention. But arguably, the most stressful, high-stakes element of biking the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive involves the massive, multi-ton vehicles that you were sharing the road with.
We have to talk about the dance with the shuttle buses.
This specific interaction is the operational crux of the entire deep dive. If a rider misinterprets the shuttle protocols, the scenic ride instantly devolves into a highly dangerous confrontation.
The foundation of the car ban rests entirely on the continuous operation of these commercial-sized transit buses running continuously up and down the canyon corridor.
And bicycles and massive commercial buses are natural enemies on a narrow roadway.
The baseline rules are fairly intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Cyclists must yield the right-of-way to the shuttles at all times. You must ride in a single-file pace line. You have to hug the right shoulder as closely as safely possible.
You obey all stop signs, wear a protective helmet, stay visible. Standard stuff.
But Zion enforces a hyper-specific, entirely unique mandate that confuses almost everyone who doesn't research it beforehand.
The park calls it the foot-down rule.
Yes, the foot-down rule.
Yeah.
What is fascinating here is the sheer rigidity of this protocol and the specific physical mechanics that necessitate it.
The mandate dictates that when a cyclist hears or sees a shuttle bus approaching from behind, they're not permitted to simply drift the right shoulder and continue pedaling at a reduced speed.
Which is exactly what you would do on literally any other road in the world.
Exactly. But in Zion, that behavior is strictly prohibited. The cyclist must locate a designated paved turnout or a sufficiently wide section of shoulder, pull their bicycle completely off the active lane, engage the brakes to come to a dead stop, and physically place 1 foot flat on the asphalt.
A dead stop. And the consequences of ignoring this rule lead to incredible tension, which was perfectly illustrated by the solo rider from Fiesta Adventures.
His footage provides a masterclass in what not to do.
It really does. So he is cruising up the scenic drive, enjoying the falls flat. He hears the heavy rumble of a diesel engine creeping up behind him.
And he acts like a standard road cyclist.
Right. He checks his shoulder, sees the bus, and simply shifts his line a few feet to the right to provide an open passing lane.
A completely logical maneuver in a standard municipal setting.
But the bus does not pass him. It drops its speed to match his, and it just hovers on his back tire.
Oh, that sounds so stressful.
It is. He is pedaling, the bus is pacing him, the tension is palpable. The rider can clearly hear the female shuttle driver broadcasting over an external speakerphone.
She's communicating with the driver in an oncoming bus, right?
Yes, she's audibly complaining about the situation, saying things like, "I don't really like it either." The cyclist is experiencing pure panic. He looks at the wide-open road ahead and thinks, there is a massive gap. Why won't this giant machine just accelerate and go around me?
The psychological stress stems from a total lack of communication regarding the park's strict liability parameters.
He didn't understand the protocol until he eventually gave up, pulled over at a scenic viewpoint, and had a very frustrated conversation with a park employee.
And the employee demystified the encounter.
Completely. The shuttle driver was not exhibiting road rage. She was executing mandatory safety procedures. She was legally forbidden from passing his moving bicycle.
She was slowly pacing him, waiting for him to pull over and plant his foot.
Once the mechanical reality of the canyon's architecture is understood, the logic behind the foot-down rule becomes impenetrable.
It really does.
Explain the physics of this, because forcing a cyclist to stop and lose all their hard-earned momentum feels almost punitive at first glance. Why can't a professional bus driver just give a bike a 3-foot berth and pass them?
Because a bicycle, by its very nature, is a dynamically unstable system. It requires forward momentum and constant micro-adjustments by the rider to remain upright. It wobbles.
Especially on a 2% incline when a rider is starting to fatigue.
Exactly. Add to that instability the potential for sudden environmental hazards. A rider might instinctively swerve laterally to avoid a sharp rock, a sudden pothole, or, a squirrel darting across the asphalt.
Furthermore, those violent canyon crosswinds we discussed can physically blow a lightweight bicycle 2 feet sideways in an instant.
Now introduce a commercial bus into that unpredictable environment. The Zion Canyon Scenic Drive was not built to modern interstate highway standards.
No, it follows the natural curvature of the river.
It's littered with tight, blind corners and sections where the shoulder simply vanishes against a sheer rock face. A commercial bus has a massive turning radius and significant blind spots.
The driver has absolutely zero margin for error.
Zero. If they attempt to pass a moving, wobbling bicycle on a blind curve and a gust of wind pushes the rider left, the result is a fatal collision.
The physics demand total predictability.
Precisely. By forcing the cyclist to execute a full stop and plant a foot, the park actively eliminates all kinetic unpredictability. The bicycle ceases to be a dynamic, swerving vehicle and becomes a static roadside object.
The bus driver can then mathematically calculate the exact trajectory needed to safely maneuver their massive vehicle past the stationary target. The rule mitigates the catastrophic risk of the narrow road.
Knowing that the driver is prioritizing your life makes the loss of momentum entirely acceptable, I think.
Totally. The solo rider noted that the very next time a bus approached, he immediately pulled into a turnout, stopped, and planted his foot.
And what happened?
The driver cheerfully waved, smiled, and passed him safely. It changes the entire dynamic from adversarial to cooperative.
However, recognizing the necessity of the rule introduces a profound logistical challenge for groups.
Oh, right. An individual rider simply listens for the engine and stops. Coordinating that maneuver across a sprawling, multi-generational family spread out over 100 yards of asphalt is complex.
If a 10-year-old at the front of the pack suddenly slams on the brakes to pull over and the teenagers behind him aren't paying attention, you have a massive pileup.
The family from the Frugal Fit Dad source approached this problem with military precision. They established a clear chain of command and a paceline strategy.
What did they do?
The father purposefully positioned himself at the absolute rear of the formation.
Operating as the sweeper.
Yes, the sweeper position.
Yeah.
By riding at the back, he had an unobstructed auditory and visual line on anything approaching from the rear. And before they even unclipped from the Springdale parking lot, they drilled verbal commands.
A communication protocol is essential to prevent panic.
When the father heard the distinctive rumble of a shuttle, he would project a specific call signal up the paceline. The teenagers would hear the call and immediately begin scanning the right shoulder for the next designated paved pull-off.
Instead of chaos, they executed a sequential merge.
The front rider pulled off, stopped, and planted a foot. The next rider pulled in behind them, and so on, until the entire family was safely lined up on the shoulder.
That level of discipline really preserves the flow of the ride.
And the data from their trip proves that the interruption is minimal. Across the entirety of the 18-mile route, battling uphill and cruising down, the father reported that they only had to execute the foot-down maneuver 4 or 5 times total.
That's nothing. Each stop only delayed them by roughly 30 to 60 seconds while the bus passed.
Sacrificing a cumulative 3 minutes of riding time to guarantee absolute safety against commercial vehicles is an exceptionally low tax to pay for accessing the canyon interior.
And realistically, stopping your bike isn't a penalty in Zion anyway. Pausing the physical exertion to just look around is the ultimate reward.
Let's pivot to that payoff. Let's talk about the sensory immersion of the canyon, because once the mechanics of the buses and the e-bikes fade into the background, the landscape really takes over.
The defining metric of the cycling experience is the total eradication of visual and auditory obstructions. We return to your initial analogy of the VIP backstage pass.
Right.
A cyclist possesses a completely unmitigated 360-degree field of vision.
When you are sitting in a passenger seat, the roof of the car physically blocks the sky. Your field of view is restricted to the bumper of the car in front of you and the lowest 100 feet of the canyon walls.
But on a bicycle, you can tilt your head back and track the cliff faces thousands of feet up to the skyline.
The sources were utterly mesmerized by the geological tapestry. You are pedaling past deep, ancient layers of charcoal-colored rock, transitioning into vibrant, oxidized reddish peaks and capped by blindingly bright, whitish Navajo sandstone formations.
And the velocity of travel fundamentally alters perception here. At 10 miles per hour, the human brain actually has the processing time to absorb the monumental scale and the subtle textural details of the geology.
Details which just blur into irrelevance when passing at 40 miles per hour in a vehicle.
Exactly. And that slower pace, along with the dramatic reduction in combustion engines, initiates a profound shift in the canyon's biology, too.
The wildlife behaves completely differently when thousands of personal cars are banned from the ecosystem.
The absence of constant aggressive engine noise and high-speed vehicular movement lowers the ambient stress levels of the local fauna. The animals become habituated to the quieter, slower-moving presence of pedestrians and cyclists.
The animal encounters captured by the sources occurred directly on the paved road. This wasn't deep backcountry tracking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one rider had to literally squeeze the brakes because a massive wild turkey was casually strolling across the asphalt.
And it wasn't scared.
Not at all. The bird didn't scatter or panic. It just methodically walked across the path, completely unbothered by the quiet hum of the bicycle tires.
That's amazing. Another cyclist actually documented an encounter where they rode within mere feet of a grazing mule deer.
Wow.
The deer simply raised its head, observed the silent rider coasting past, and just returned to foraging. The animals classify a slow-moving cyclist as a neutral entity in the environment, rather than a high-speed threat.
And the interaction between the visitors changes too. One rider documented pulling over simply because he saw another cyclist standing on the shoulder staring intently through a pair of high-powered binoculars.
Oh, what were they looking at?
The cyclist was scanning the highest thermal drafts looking for California condors.
Oh, wow. The California condor is one of the rarest, most heavily protected bird species on the planet, and Zion is a critical habitat for their recovery.
Right. If you are trapped on a shuttle bus and you catch a glimpse of a 10-foot wingspan circling a peak, you cannot scream at the driver to pull over immediately. You miss the moment entirely.
But on a bike, you squeeze the brakes, plant your foot, and you are instantly participating in the discovery. You share the binoculars, you connect with the environment and the community.
It's beautiful. But this deep immersion in the wilderness is eventually punctuated by a highly unusual piece of infrastructure.
The canyon is not entirely devoid of modern comfort. Roughly halfway up the scenic drive near shuttle stop number 4, riders encounter a significant anomaly in national park design.
The Zion National Park Lodge. It suddenly emerges from the cottonwood trees like a mirage.
The lodge represents a fascinating historical compromise. It is the only commercial lodging and dining facility located entirely within the restrictive boundaries of the main canyon.
The architecture is this sprawling complex of historic cabins constructed in the 1920s, a massive main lodge building, and hidden employee housing, all nestled directly under the shadows of the sandstone towers.
For a cyclist who has just spent an hour burning calories and battling a headwind, the lodge represents a massive temptation.
Oh, I bet. What amenities are actually accessible to someone just passing through on a bike?
The facility is incredibly robust. A tired rider can secure their bike and access the Red Rock Grill, which offers formal sit-down dining.
Nice.
For a quicker turnaround, the Castle Dome Cafe provides fast casual options, coffee, and immediately accessible calories.
Essential.
They maintain comprehensive restroom facilities and dedicated water refill stations, which are vital survival tools in the desert. And perhaps most dangerously enticing for an adult finishing a long ride, the lodge operates an outdoor beer garden serving local craft brews under the trees.
Okay, that sounds amazing. But the psychological warfare of the Castle Dome Cafe actually produced one of the most agonizing, relatable moments in our source material.
Oh no, what happened?
The father from the family group was deep into the 18-mile ride. He is pushing the pedals, feeling the burn in his legs, and as he routes his bike past the lodge complex, the wind shifts.
Oh, I know where this is going.
He gets hit with the dense, unmistakable, heavily salted aroma of deep-fried French fries wafting from the cafe exhaust vents.
A very powerful olfactory trigger when the body is in a caloric deficit.
It is the ultimate test of willpower. And he failed to stop. He kept pedaling to stay with the group.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Later in the video, capturing his thoughts on camera, you can hear the profound sorrow in his voice. He literally laments, "I smelt those fries. I'm regretting that."
That is hilarious, but it serves as a critical strategic warning for anyone planning this route. The lodge is the absolute final outpost of commercial convenience.
Once you pedal past the lodge, the canyon walls aggressively tighten. The space constricts. You are leaving the infrastructure behind.
You ride past the Kayenta Trailhead, which serves as the launching point for hikers attempting to secure permits for Angel's Landing.
And simply looking up at the knife-edge ridge of Angel's Landing from the safety of the valley floor while sitting on a bicycle is enough to induce vertigo. The scale is terrifying.
It's dizzying, but you keep pushing the pedals and eventually the asphalt simply runs out. You hit the geographical apex of the route.
The scenic drive culminates at a colossal, natural amphitheater carved into the sandstone known as the Temple of Sinawava.
This location serves as the definitive terminus for all-wheeled transport.
The transition here is absolute. The sources captured footage of the heavy steel signage marking the end of the line. It's a stark, unambiguous, no bikes allowed warning planted right at the mouth of the dirt trails.
This is the demarcation line between engineered infrastructure and pure, unadulterated wilderness. Bicycles lack the physical capability and the legal permission to proceed any further up the river corridor.
But the park anticipates this bottleneck, right?
Mm-hmm.
They provide extensive rows of heavy-duty bike racks at the Temple of Sinawava.
Yes, this is the moment you deploy the e-bike basket strategy we talked about earlier. You secure your lock, you swap your lightweight cycling shoes for heavy hiking boots, you retrieve your trekking poles, and you undergo the physical transformation from a cyclist into a hiker.
The Temple of Sinawava is the gateway to the Narrows, offering access to one of the most famous slot canyon hikes on Earth.
Even for visitors who have zero intention of wading miles upstream through the freezing, rushing water of the Virgin River, leaving the bike behind is mandatory at this point.
You can utilize the accessible, 1-mile paved river boardwalk that winds intimately along the canyon floor. It provides a vital physiological cool-down period.
You dismount, walk the flat path, dip your hands in the cold river water, and stare up at canyon walls that have narrowed until they are practically touching overhead.
It is a moment to process the sheer magnitude of the accomplishment.
Once the exploration of the Temple of Sinawava concludes, the biological demands of the journey shift entirely. You return to the racks, unchain the bicycle, and rotate the handlebars south, pointing back toward the Springdale entrance.
This is the moment every cyclist dreams of, the turnaround, the transition into the final phase.
The physical dynamics of the environment instantly invert.
We discussed the agonizing nature of the 2% false flat during the 9-mile ascent. When you turn that bicycle around, that relentless, invisible uphill gradient transforms from an adversary into a massive, silent engine.
You are now aligning with the pull of gravity. The reduction in required physical exertion is immediate and profound.
The kinetic energy generated by the decline essentially propels the bicycle without requiring significant muscular input from the rider.
And the telemetry data provides a staggering comparison here. The father, tracking his family's progress, noted that the agonizing pedal into the canyon required an hour and 20 minutes of steady, sustained effort.
And the return trip, from the Temple of Sinawava all the way back to the visitor center, took exactly 40 minutes.
Gravity slashed their travel time by 50%.
For 9 continuous miles, the act of cycling is reduced to the mere management of momentum. You cease aggressive pedaling.
You assume a relaxed posture, rest your fingers lightly over the brake levers to navigate the sweeping curves, and just allow the mass of the earth to draw you back toward the park gates.
But the sources flagged a highly specific, potentially dangerous sensory consequence of that rapid descent. You cannot allow the ease of coasting to lull you into ignoring the elements.
Right, we must revisit the canyon's thermodynamics.
The velocity achieved during a sustained 9-mile downhill coast radically alters the wind chill factor against the rider's body.
One of the riders actually analyzed his GPS speedometer data and was shocked to realize he was maintaining a speed of 25 miles per hour while completely freewheeling.
25 miles per hour on an exposed bicycle frame, cutting through the dense, cool air trapped at the bottom of the canyon, strips radiant heat from the human body incredibly fast.
The rider explicitly noted that while his torso remained relatively comfortable, the rapid acceleration caused the temperature of his exposed hands to plummet. He was freezing.
This is the exact scenario that validates the modular layering strategy we established earlier.
You might have stripped down to a synthetic t-shirt while sweating heavily on the climb, but the moment you unlock that bike at the Temple of Sinawava to head home, you must aggressively relayer.
You zip the windproof shell all the way up to your chin, you put the insulated gloves back on.
If you fail to protect your extremities, the rapid loss of heat combined with the lack of physical exertion to generate new warmth will make the 40-minute descent totally miserable.
But assuming the rider has executed the layering strategy correctly, the descent represents the absolute pinnacle of the Zion experience.
It's described across the sources as a state of transcendent flow.
The heavy, ragged breathing of the ascent vanishes. The mechanical clicking of shifting gears stops. Because you are not fighting the incline, your peripheral vision expands. You are no longer staring at your front tire in exhaustion.
The auditory environment clarifies beautifully. Stripped of your own heavy respiration and the abrasive noise of passenger vehicles, the true soundscape of the canyon floor emerges.
You are rocketing down the asphalt, and all you hear is the rushing current of the Virgin River continuously flanking your left side.
You watch the vibrant, almost neon green leaves of the cottonwood trees flashing by, creating a stunning visual contrast against the deep, ancient red rock faces blurring in your periphery.
You are effectively flying through a geological cathedral. It is a profound, high-speed interaction with deep time.
As we synthesize the sheer volume of data we've unpacked today, the intricate history of the car ban, the physics of e-bikes, the critical safety protocols of the shuttle buses, and the thermodynamic realities of the canyon, a definitive conclusion really emerges for anyone planning a trip.
The cumulative evidence from the sources points to a singular verdict regarding transportation within the park.
The verdict is that bringing a bicycle to the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive is not merely a quirky secondary option to avoid a long line.
It is not a backup plan. Biking the canyon is objectively, undeniably, the premier method of experiencing the landscape.
It represents a structurally superior mechanism for interacting with the natural environment.
Achieving that superiority demands respect, though. You cannot treat it casually. You must respect the thermal drops of the microclimate by bringing the correct layers.
You must understand the limitations of a heavy mountain bike.
Most importantly, you must strictly adhere to the safety mandates, executing that vital foot-down complete stop every single time a shuttle bus approaches your rear tire.
But when you operate within those boundaries, the canyon rewards you with an experience that cannot be replicated behind glass.
You secure the freedom to stop at any moment. You integrate with the wildlife. You entirely bypass the claustrophobia of the masses. And you earn an intense physical connection to the earth.
Analyzing the success of Zion's cycling infrastructure forces us to confront a fascinating counterintuitive reality regarding how we manage and preserve our wild spaces on a national level.
It completely flips our cultural understanding of restriction.
Historically, when a governing body bans personal automobiles from a public roadway for 9 months out of the year, the public perceives it as a draconian loss of liberty.
We view the removal of the car as a huge barrier to access.
But Zion Canyon proves the exact opposite. By forcefully eliminating the insulating convenience of the personal vehicle, park management did not ruin the experience, they rescued it.
They took an environment that was literally choking to death on its own traffic and engineered an incredibly intimate human-scale sanctuary.
It is a stunning reframing of what it means to actually visit a place. It forces us to ask a critical question as visitation numbers at national parks continue to shatter records annually.
What's the question?
Well, what other heavily trafficked, gridlocked natural wonders across the country are currently being loved to death that could be radically transformed and perhaps permanently saved if we possess the courage to force every visitor to leave their car at the gate, step out of the climate-controlled bubble, and experience the majesty of the landscape at 10 miles per hour on two wheels?
That is the ultimate thought to carry with you, because I guarantee, once you have felt the raw acoustic power of a 2,000-foot sandstone wall reverberate through the saddle of a bicycle, the idea of getting back into a car to look at a mountain just feels like turning on a tiny television set. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Secure your helmet, double-check your thermal layers, respect the shuttle buses, and we will see you out there.